if you would rather say it's fine through gritted teeth than tell someone they hurt you, if you've rehearsed a hard conversation in the shower a dozen times and never had it, if you can feel a disagreement building in a room before anyone else does, and your whole body starts looking for the exit, this is for you. Most people think this means you're weak, passive, someone who lets people walk over you because you don't have the spine to push back. But psychology suggests something different. What looks like weakness from the outside is often one of the most sophisticated threat detection systems the human nervous system builds. You didn't avoid conflict by accident. You built the habit carefully because at some point it worked. Welcome back. Let's get into it. 1. The fight or flight response isn't the whole story. You already know about fight or flight. What most people don't know is that trauma researcher Pete Walker identified a third, quieter survival response, the fawn response. Instead of fighting the threat or fleeing it, you appease it, you smooth it over. You make yourself agreeable so fast that the danger never gets the chance to escalate. If you grew up in a house where a raised voice meant real danger, your nervous system didn't file that away as an unpleasant memory, filed it as data. And the fawn response was the fastest, safest exit. Not because you're weak, because it worked, and your brain doesn't discard what works. The micro-action here isn't stop fawning, it's noticing the moment it happens. Next time you feel yourself agreeing before you've actually decided you agree, just name it internally. That was the fawn response. Naming it is the first crack in the automatic reflex. 2. You learn to silence your own voice. Psychologist Dana Jack studied this specifically in the context of relationships and called it self-silencing, the habit of suppressing your own thoughts, needs, and disagreements to preserve a connection you're afraid of losing. This isn't the same as being quiet by nature. It's an active suppression, a real cost paid every time, even though nobody else can see the transaction. Self-silencing correlates with higher rates of anxiety and depression because the unspoken thought doesn't disappear. It just moves inward, where it has nowhere left to go but back onto you. The micro-action. Pick one low-stakes disagreement this week, a restaurant choice, a scheduling conflict, and say the honest version out loud instead of the smoothed-over one. Not the biggest fight you're avoiding, the smallest one. Muscles rebuild in small reps, not one heavy lift. 3. Harmony became part of your identity. Here's the part that catches people off guard. Once you've been the easygoing one for long enough, avoiding conflict stops being a strategy and starts being who you think you are. And that creates a problem. Psychologists call it cognitive dissonance, the discomfort of holding two things that don't fit together. Being upset and believing you're not the type of person who gets upset. So instead of resolving the disagreement, you resolve the dissonance the easier way. You swallow the feeling to protect the identity. It's not dishonesty. It's your mind choosing the smaller, faster fix over the harder, truer one. The micro-action. Try replacing "I'm not really a confrontational person" with "I'm someone who's still learning how to disagree safely." Same underlying trait, but one version leaves room to change and the other locks you into a fixed script. 4. Conflict reads as abandonment risk. If your early relationships taught you that expressing disagreement led to withdrawal, punishment, or someone pulling away emotionally, your attachment system learned a hard rule. Conflict equals the risk of losing the relationship altogether. This is a core finding in attachment theory. Anxiously attached individuals in particular tend to suppress conflict specifically to avoid triggering abandonment. It's not that you're overreacting. It's that your nervous system is running a prediction based on old evidence applied to a present situation that may not deserve it. The rope frays in your imagination faster than it actually would in reality. The micro-action. Before avoiding a hard conversation, ask yourself one question. Is this person's track record actually one of abandoning me over disagreement, or am I predicting that from somewhere else? You're not obligated to trust the prediction just because it's familiar. 5. Your body reacts before your mind does. Relationship researcher John Gottman documented a phenomenon called flooding, a state where your heart rate spikes, your body floods with stress hormones, and your ability to think clearly and listen collapses almost entirely. Once flooding hits, you're not avoiding conflict by choice anymore. You're avoiding it because your physiology has made calm participation nearly impossible. This is why walking away sometimes isn't cowardice. It's your body doing exactly what it's built to do, under perceived threat. The problem isn't that flooding happens. It's not having a plan for what to do when it does. The microaction. Gottman's own research supports a real pause, 20 minutes minimum, doing something that isn't rehashing the argument in your head before returning to the conversation, not avoiding it forever, returning to it once. Your body has actually caught up with your mind. 6. Unpredictable environments taught you constant vigilance. If conflict in your early environment was unpredictable, sometimes minor, sometimes explosive, with no reliable way to tell which, you likely developed a heightened state psychologists call hypervigilance. You're not just avoiding the conflict in front of you, you're scanning for every conflict that might be coming. This explains why even small tension, a slightly flat tone of voice, a pause that's a beat too long, can feel disproportionately alarming. You're not misreading the moment. You're reading it through a system trained on a much less predictable one. The microaction isn't to stop scanning immediately. That's not realistic. It's to build one grounding habit you return to when the scanning spikes, a few slow breaths, feet planted, naming 3 things you can actually see in the room. Not to suppress the alarm, to give your nervous system current, real-time evidence that this room is not that one. 7. Avoidance feels like control. Finally, there's a simpler mechanism underneath all the others. Avoiding conflict gives you a predictable outcome. Even when it isn't a good outcome, it's a known one. Psychologists connect this to a broader pattern of learned helplessness. When past attempts to change an outcome didn't work, the mind starts favoring the certainty of a bad but known result over the uncertainty of trying again. Silence is a bad outcome, but it's a bad outcome you can predict exactly. Speaking up is a coin flip. And the mind, given the choice between a guaranteed small loss and a possible larger one, will often choose the guarantee, even when the guarantee is quietly costing you more over time. The microaction, instead of asking, what if this goes badly, ask, what has speaking up actually cost me the 2 or 3 times I've tried it recently? Real data, not predicted data, is the only thing that retrains this calculation. Here's the through line across all 7 of these. Avoiding conflict was never a character flaw. It was a set of adaptations. The fawn response, self-silencing, an identity built around harmony, an attachment system predicting abandonment, a body that floods before the mind can catch up, a nervous system still scanning for danger that already passed, and a mind that reasonably prefers the outcome it can predict. None of that means the pattern has to be permanent. It means the pattern makes sense. And patterns that make sense are the ones you can actually work with instead of ones you have to fight against. This isn't about becoming someone who starts conflict everywhere. It's about closing the gap between what you actually think and what you actually say, one small, low-stakes rep at a time. So tell me, which one of these 7 landed the closest to home for you? Was it the fawn response, the flooding, the fear that speaking up costs you the relationship? Put the number in the comments. It helps the next person scrolling past this find the exact point they needed to see today.